and welcome to the Path Radio Spotlight. I am your host, Guido Perino, welcoming from the bowels of obscurity to the pinnacle of perseverance, Lions in the Street, lead vocals and guitarist, Chris Kinnon. Welcome to the show, Chris. Thank you for being here to chat with us. How are you?
Doing great. Thanks, Guido. Appreciate it.
That's good to hear. It's good that you're doing great. We're doing great too, just north of Toronto, as we were reminiscing here before we kicked off. But look, I need to address something here. Continuing with what seems to be an unintentional trend on the Path Radio Spotlight, I understand that we may have another Canada-California connection. The band is made up of yourself, your brother Jeff on drums, Enzo on bass, and Sean on guitar. Who's from Canada? Who's from California?
All of us are from Canada. All four of us are from Canada. It's just that I live now in San Diego and my brother is in LA quite a lot for work. Sean is sometimes in LA for work. So we're kind of multi or cross border rock and roll now.
I love this. The
But
Canada
we're all
invasion.
Canadians. None of us have US citizenship yet or at all. So we are all Canadian citizens.
The Canada invasion continues. This is awesome. All right. Now
Awesome.
I got to make sure we don't offend anybody though on either side of the border, right? So,
Oh,
uh,
yeah.
keeping in mind with that, do you have a favorite thing that you could share with us about where you are in San Diego or LA or keeping in mind not to offend anybody, Vancouver?
Yeah, I've got a good story. So when we were in making recording for the labels, when we were signed to these labels, we recorded in LA. We were in LA for a long time, like 6 months in kind of the winter of 2005, around 2005, I think. And it was so beautiful that winter in Southern California. I mean, it didn't rain at all. It was sunny. It was glorious. It wasn't too hot. It was like 70 degrees, so like 22, 23, Celsius, just perfect weather, 21 degrees. And we made a record. And then when we came back to Vancouver, it rained for 40 straight days. 40 straight days. So I think that kind of illustrates the difference between Vancouver and Los Angeles. But in those 40 days, we were pretty productive. Like we were in the basement, we're demoing songs, recording stuff. So I don't know, both have their advantages, right? Sometimes in the wintry or Vancouver doesn't get winter like the rest of the country, the rest of Canada does, but it does get rain, you know. So I think in those climates where it's either snowy or rainy, you can be pretty productive. Like you can do a lot of things, artistically or mentally or whatever. You can get a lot done when the weather isn't nice outside. So I kind of appreciate both.
When, at what point did you start counting the days of rain?
Well, that's a funny question. Yeah, the weather man started doing that for us on the front page. It was on the front page of the paper. 39 days, 40. It's 40 days is like biblical. Like everybody wants to hit 40 days of rain. Is some kind of like we did 38, we might as well do 40. So
Is there a song? Do you have a song called 40 Days of Rain or
yeah, we have our song Shangri-La. We have that lyric, 40 days of
40 Days
rain
of
back in
Rain? Yeah.
Shangri-La. Because they call Vancouver Shangri-La.
Yeah.
Well, wasn't really Shangri-La that winter.
So look, you hit on the labels thing there. So for the benefit of those on a music discovery journey, as they learn more about you and the band, if they're new Lions fans, it's been well documented that as a band you face some serious adversity where the music industry may have shunned you out a little bit, but here you are. So briefly touch on why, if you can, there was that little bit of push aside. But as you're doing that, maybe tell us what the worst part of that experience was. How much did it impact your music career and life, and how do you climb back up that mountain?
Yeah, so we signed deals at the end of what I call the old record business. So when this was about 2003, when the record business, people were still buying CDs. There was still lots of money. It was flush with money still. Labels were signing bands. They were paying for bands to go into recording studios with famous producers and make records. And so when we signed there, kind of at the tail end of it, we were doing that. We were testing with all these producers. You have to find a producer that fits with the band and the label. Everybody, management, everybody likes the producer. And so we went through like a list of producers and we couldn't agree on anybody. Some great producers, great people, not, not their fault. We just couldn't, there was no meeting of the minds, between all the parties there. So anyway, went on for a little while. We finally found some people we liked. We ended up that everybody liked, and we ended up recording in LA, the story I was just telling you about. Um, and so after that, there was a dispute about the track listing. So we had the label wanted us to record some older songs. They heard demos of these. My brother and I were in a band called Mount Pleasant before. So they
Right.
heard some of these songs and they wanted us to record some of those. And we didn't really want to record those. Our manager, who was a big manager, didn't want us to record those. He wanted us to record with his buddy Steve Thompson, who did the Appetite for Destruction album, mixed that, and wanted us to go to the studio in Massachusetts. So big fight over how to finish the record, and which songs will be on the record. And looking back, it was kind of stupid. They were all pretty good songs, and I think we would have been happy with any of them coming out. But in the moment, you get people to adopt positions, and you get like egos get involved, and that's what happened with us, really. So between the labels and the manager, there was a big fight. We were kind of stuck in the middle. And at the end of the day, we had to hire a lawyer, Don Engel, who was Van Halen's lawyer for 30 years. And like the one lawyer every artist who ever had a fight with their label went running to, because he was a really good guy, really great lawyer. And so we sort of broke the deals because we didn't break the deals. We told the labels that they'd breached the contracts and therefore they weren't enforceable against us. And so what happened in the meantime, though, was the entire music business was falling apart. It was kind of the file sharing era. And I don't have a feeling about that one way or the other. That change, it was like a technological change more than anything. So what do? You can't really fight it. It's like Uber or something, there's maybe you can fight it a little bit, but it seems like those things seem inevitable. So there was less and less money in the music business for these labels, and they sure weren't spending money. So when we did go out on our own after splitting from the labels, they wouldn't release us from the contract, but they wouldn't put the record out either. It's like you're in purgatory. And so in that situation, we just toured on our own and we released some music on our own. We went to South by Southwest. We were in a bunch of blogs at the time. We're big. We went to CMJ. We played all these shows. We toured on our own. And at the end of the day, labels would always come see us. Like I remember this one, Downtown Records, was really interested, and they did like Gnarls Barkley and all these acts. Pretty cool label. And a few others, and they just say to us like, "Listen, no, either you go back to your label or you just keep going on your own because nobody's going to sign you now." It's not just that they know you're difficult in their parlance, right? In the music business's definition of that, but also just there's no money to fight the label. Like they have enough trouble funding records right now, getting bands into studios. They don't have the money to spend on a legal fight right now. They're just not going to do it. So when we say blacklisted, that's just kind of euphemism for all those things. Like it's true that labels didn't like us. The old labels wouldn't they've made life as difficult as possible for us. The new ones wouldn't touch us.
So you're out there on your own. Regrets?
Yeah, sure. Of course, always regrets in that circumstance. I mean, you work your whole life up till that point to sign a record deal. And so few bands sign them. And we signed, TVT Records at the time in New York was like the fourth biggest label in the world. They had Nine Inch Nails and Pitbull and Yin Yang. Who was the other artist? Pitbull and Little John. All these kind of like big hip hop artists. They were doing great. And you think, well, we weren't the only ones. Uh, I should say they weren't the only ones with ego involved in it. Looking back, you can say,
Yeah.
yeah, mea culpa. Like we probably could have done something different. Maybe we should have, sided with the people paying our way rather than our manager. But it's hindsight's 2020, as they say. I don't know. That at the time we felt like we were justified in the position we took. I think we probably were, but that doesn't change the fact that your album still doesn't come out and your
Right.
career still gets basically flushed down the toilet. I mean, you have to. There's consequences for every decision. There, we think we acted with integrity, but maybe a surplus of integrity, maybe a little bit less integrity would have been good for us. So
Rock and roll lessons learned. But you are where you are, and the journey might not have been what you initially planned for it to be. But you're in a good spot right now. I want to ask that your brother's in the band with you. Um, does going through something like this not make it easier, but having somebody like your brother, a like a close family member, with you, does it change anything? Does it motivate you more as family members? And that's not to say that the four of you as a band weren't a family, but just having your brother, does that factor into anything?
I guess so. I mean, we always just got along, all four of us. It was three of us, and then we added Enzo. And we been playing with Enzo for so long. You're right. It is family. I don't think so. Like we're all comfortable with each other. We all believe each other. When someone says they like something or they don't like something, you trust them. You know they're always telling you the truth. So I don't know. It's somewhat easier to go through it, but it was hard no matter what. I mean,
Yeah,
as a result of that decision, like to walk away from the labels because they wouldn't put out the record we wanted them to.
right.
I worked as a sanitation worker for almost 7 years. I worked for waste management at first with Enzo's brother, and then I worked for the city of Vancouver, picking up municipal recycling, which is a really hard job. It was still physical. A lot of
Mm.
the sanitation departments now are automated. The trucks have the mechanical arm that comes out and
Yeah.
grabs it again. Well, that wasn't municipal recycling. You'd pick up those blue boxes and the blue bags and the yellow bags. And in Vancouver, they'd be waterlogged. So you'd have a box that would weigh 50 pounds or something, full of newsprint. So, I mean, that was a hard job.
Mm.
And, it wasn't, I can't blame. It was a good job. I liked the job. I learned a lot. Hurt my back, but that's just job hazard. So I think out of that, you do learn something about resilience, and you learn something about like courage. And honestly, you learn how good regular life is. Like most people aren't signed to record labels. Most people do jobs like sanitation worker, and you learn that that's a darn good life. Like it really is. If you play your cards right, you've got your weekends off. You can barbecue with your friends and family. You don't work insane hours. You work like 7 hours a day. You're out in the fresh air sometimes, or you're out in the rain, in the elements too. But you see a lot of beautiful things. You see regular people. I remember this is a funny story that Enzo always used to like because I talk about him. Enzo, his parents are from Calabria, Figliuzzi, and so his parents, he's first gen Canadian, and we drive through East Van in my sanitation truck. Yeah, but what the best part of driving through East Van was seeing the gardens in the alleys that you couldn't see from the front of the street, right? You had no idea some of these houses, they had these most magnificent gardens, like especially the Italian houses. So I used to take pictures and we send them to Enzo, like, and we talk back and forth about, yeah, oh, look at that fig tree. Cause you did these magnificent fig trees, someone's pride and joy would have 400 figs on it or something. Crazy stuff. But so that was one real great memory about working on those trucks. So not just the Italian gardens, a lot of Portuguese, really good Portuguese gardeners. A lot of Chinese Vancouverites have like incredible gardens in East Van. It's like a whole thing. So I think that's kind of akin to like living your life. Like you being having a regular job. Who cares? Who cares what your job is? You got this magnificent garden at the back of your house that you get to go into every night, pull peas off or tomatoes and make your own food. Like it's great. Life is good no matter what your work is. So I think that's one good lesson.
Whole lot of perspective delivered to us, even with the waterlogged blue bins there of the Vancouver rain and how that
Absolutely.
felt. And I gotta shout out to Enzo there and my fellow Calabrian. So
Thanks.
those gardens, I know exactly what you're talking about because we had one.
Uh,
So,
Very nice. Very
we
cool.
had those. And my, fortunately my parents, they still do it at 90 years old. They're still out there doing that. These
Amazing.
incredible, incredible gardens. And what are, again, great story, great perspective, resiliency, perseverance. Interesting what went on with the labels. Um, I've talked to a lot of artists on here, and you started talking about the transition of what happened with the music industry. Some artists loathe the streaming platforms because they feel that it's flooded the market, it's changed the way that music is delivered.
Right.
Some, say we've got so much on there, there's questionable quality of music now. Anybody can just put whatever out there. But others seem grateful because it also gave them an opportunity, a venue to reach an audience that they could have never reached before. Um, knowing what you've gone through watching that sort of the music industry change, and at a time when maybe it would have been good if it didn't change for you,
Yeah.
where do you, or where does Lions in the Street sit on the whole notion now of the streaming platforms?
Well, I guess we never made any money selling records before, selling CDs before. So that might have changed my view on it, right? If you went from selling a lot of CDs to not selling any CDs, I mean, do you know what I'm saying? Like we didn't
Yeah,
have any success really, apart from signing the record label, the deals in that old era. So we may have a different view of it. I'm grateful for it ultimately. I think you can't fight technology really. I mean, you can adapt. And I think the thing that labels used to accomplish for artists was distribution, right? So you'd have a great band in Toronto, but if you didn't have your record distributed into the US or it wasn't available in England or in Europe, it didn't really matter. Nobody knew about you. I mean, you could, even if you had a good write up in Rolling Stone or something in the other era, if nobody could get the record, it didn't matter. It was like
right.
almost futile, that kind of press. So I think that the streaming services have answered the distribution problem. But in doing so, they've created another volume problem, and there isn't a corresponding kind of network of gatekeepers like there used to be. So I think that's what's missing it a little bit. You've seen like kind of the erosion of mainstream culture everywhere, where there's no real mainstream anymore. There are these little
Yeah.
niches. And that's cool in a lot of ways. It really is, because the mainstream didn't serve everybody, you know? But I think that you lose something as well, which is now I don't think very many people outside of like a top 40 pop really understand anything of a. I don't think there is such a thing as a hit anymore. You have the big one like Taylor Swift or something, or there's one or two
Sure.
songs every year, that Miley Cyrus song Flowers or something that everybody knows. But that's it. Like it used to be, there are a bunch of rock fans, and every rock fan knew what the big hits were in rock in that genre. Maybe
Yeah.
still the same in country. I can't speak to that much, but it seems like we lost a little bit of mainstream. And what you need more than anything is kind of like some way of filtering out the excess, right? But I don't
Yeah.
have an answer for that at all. But I'm just grateful that we can get music out and people can like it. I think social media is a big part of that too now, which is a good thing, I think, for
You
us.
know, it makes sense. And that, I'm calling it, sometimes I say there's some noise out there where, and as I said, anybody can put anything out, and it kind of like, there's things I do want to hear, right? And so that filter needs to be applied.
Right.
What do the names Sandy Roberton and Blue Horizon mean to you?
Well, Sandy was a guy that we knew when we were signed to the labels because he was a big English producer. Like he produced a bunch of these English folk artists, the folk kind of English folk rock in the 70s for like the Fairport Convention adjacent bands, like Steel Eye Span was one, and John Martin is another. These kind of like legendary, sort of underground, but so they were like electric folk bands. Richard Thompson came out of Fairport Convention, Sandy Denny, who was, of course, singing on the Battle of Evermore on the Led Zeppelin, like all that British folk stuff. He was really involved in that. But before that, as a producer, he made all these records. So he was working with Mike Vernon and the Vernon brothers, who started Blue Horizon Records, and they had the import license for Chess Records. So all the blues records that came into England came in. Most of them came in through Blue Horizon or through Mike Vernon and Sandy, and then they signed Rod Stewart. I think they signed Jeff Beck, if I'm not mistaken. They certainly signed John Mayall, and they had like the Beano record, the first big Clapton record on with John Mayall, and a bunch of other stuff. I think they signed Small Faces or one of the Steve Marriott bands. Anyway, and then from there he came to America. So he came to America and he started managing record producers. So he managed what was that songwriting group that did all the Avril Lavigne songs? The Matrix. Do you remember they were called?
Yeah.
The Matrix, the
Uh,
Skater Boy and whatever the Complicated, all those Avril Lavigne
yeah.
songs. So he managed them, and he managed a bunch of other artists. He's a great guy. He's a real straight shooter. He's a very tough guy. He's a very tough guy. I don't mean you were afraid of him physically, but he was very smart and he was direct. And everybody in the music business was kind of afraid of him because you just couldn't push him around. I mean that in the best possible way, like admirable. stick to your guns kind of attitude. And at any rate, Sandy heard us at one point and liked us. He also managed a couple of the producers that we'd worked with the label. And so we just started talking when we had these songs that were kind of rattling around, and we put an EP out with him around 2014, 2013. But he passed away a year or two ago.
Yeah.
So RIP, he's a force for good in the music business for sure. For
So
sure.
reflecting on 2014, good memories.
Good memories. I mean, we didn't really do anything with that EP. It was like now I kind of know a little more about what we should have done on the business side, how we could have worked with him and partnered on, promoting it. We didn't promote it at all. We just basically put it up on Spotify, and that was it.
Spotify, do your thing.
Exactly. It didn't work, but it was fun. Still, it was cool.
So this time around, we're doing something a little different. You have a new album coming out on November 8th called Moving Along.
That's right.
I'm gonna ask you a bunch of questions about it, but starting out, what is the most exciting thing about releasing this album right now?
I think it's just the scope of distribution that everybody's going to get a chance to hear it, and that we think it's a great album from, tip to toe. Like I don't think there's anything weak about it anywhere. There's no filler, all killer. Isn't that like what are they called? It's one of those Toronto bands. All killer, no filler. Isn't that
All
their
killer,
album?
no filler.
That's how we feel about it. Sum 41, that's the band I'm trying to think of. But yeah, I mean, it's just exciting to put it out. It's exciting to be back at releasing music, and we think that there's a whole audience of people that'll like it. And there's really not that much in the space that sounds like it. So we think it fills a need.
The lead track on the album is mixed by Rick Parker. It is also called Moving Along. It opens with this sense of enchanting rhythmic explosion. Then you got the drums that embrace the lead guitar riffs. Then we're greeted by this enchantment of bluesy harmonica. And then it all kind of gets reeled in with this vocal that to me was reminiscent of a young Mick Jagger. And I want to know. I have a few questions, I guess, as I think about all these things. Do you get compared to Mick Jagger? And if you do you like it?
Yeah, sometimes, and I don't care. I'm happy with it. Obviously, we love the Stones.
Yeah.
I've always listened to the Stones, probably as much or more than anybody on the planet. But we also share, like, it's weird to say, but I feel like I kind of share influences with the Stones, even though we're from different generations. But
Yeah.
we came like through my dad, I had all these like I'd hear all this 50s rock growing up. So I feel like my first influences were the same as their first rock influences, even though it's removed generationally, just so I hear like Chuck Berry, and I hear Dwayne
Yeah.
Eddy, and I hear Eddie Cochran, and I hear all that, Carl Perkins and all that 50s rock, all the rockabilly stuff too, um, first, and then I got to the Stones a little later, and it made sense to me as like the next step in the kind of R&B rock and roll evolution, right? It's a little grungier, it's a little grimier, it's a little more electric, it's just a little more intense. And I got into that about the same time I got into the Clash, and I feel like those two influences are kind of like, I don't know, the most important ones. The first kind of era of punk rock. It isn't really punk, it's not hardcore for sure. But it's rock, and all that punk rock stuff is like rock and roll, really. Sex Pistols are the first Clash records. They're just rock and roll band. I mean, you can hear the R&B in it too. So I don't know. When people say you sound like somebody, I'm always like, yeah, I listen to them a ton. Like, and that those are kind of the singers I like too. Like,
Yeah.
I'm not. You can't be Rod Stewart. I wish I could sing like Rod Stewart or like Steve Marriott, but I just can't. It's not me. So I've got a little bit more limited, voice than those guys, and I feel like Mick Jagger is a guy who makes the most of his voice, with character and a little bit of effect.
I'm pretty sure some of us wish they had those limitations, Chris. Lions in the Street also seems to have this panache for the blues. Um, is Is it that genre of music we just talked about that influences it? Is it environment that influences it? Is it your story that influences it?
Yeah, I think all the above, really. I mean, I got into blues not so much, if I'm honest, not so much as a feeling initially. I got into it as a guitar player. Like I think a lot of
Mm.
like, white suburban kids in that in the in the 90s are like you hear that stuff kind of like I don't know. I got into Clapton pretty early, and that Blues Breakers record, the John Mayall one with the Beano cover, and it's just something about that moved me for sure. It wasn't so much the feeling of the blues, which there I don't know. I don't know whether John Mayall's blues feelings were authentic or not. Like I can't say. I can say for sure after that, getting into like Otis Rush, that Otis Rush, his blues feelings were authentic. I mean, you can feel it far beyond just the guitar playing or the singing. Like it's just comes through him, his life. I don't have a life like that, obviously, but I think as you gain experience in life, everybody suffers a little bit. Everybody, what's the REM song? Everybody hurts. I think it's true, and you come to appreciate blues more, spiritually or as an expression of your pain, than just a cool guitar sound or like that was the big thing with Clapton for me, always on that Beano record. It's like, how does that guy get that guitar tone? It's incredible. It's like the best thing I've ever heard in my entire life. And I don't think anything ever gets back to that first, like, your first formal influence or whatever, formative influence. But as you go along, you pick up experience, and that's reflected in the music. Certainly, what happened with us, as I went from like hanging out at the fancy hotels in LA eating, we were eating dinner with Todd Rundgren and Lou Reed was there at the same time, and Laurie Anderson. We saw all these people in LA, to riding on the back of a garbage truck at Waste Management and then picking up garbage. Like that hurts. It doesn't, it's whether that's the same, it's obviously not the same as some people have pain in life. Some people have pain from the second they're born until they die a terrible death. It's not like that, but it's just kind of, I don't know, everybody's experience of pain is painful. That sounds like
No.
but you know what I'm saying? Like how you look at a little kid, and a little kid is upset, even a baby is upset about something, and it could just be a toenail that's bugging them, but they're crying like it's the end of their world. So I think our experience of pain is like so relative that it's profound no matter what. And I think you suffer a little bit, even if that some of that suffering is your own doing, or just losing a little bit of the life you thought you wanted. And that's reflected in the music too, ultimately, I think. So some of those lyrics for sure we could not have written. Like there's one on there that I'm proud of, which is I forget how it goes. When I was poor, I was a harder man. I tell you, work 47 hours a week,
Yeah.
but with holes in my shoes, I didn't have no blues. Now I'm in an awful place. That's really true. Like that gets back to what I was talking about, working a regular job, picking up garbage. Life was okay. Like I wasn't at the W Hotel. I wasn't hanging out with Todd Rundgren, but I had a Friday off and I could go barbecue and have a cup of cold beer, and well, my life was pretty good. You know what I'm saying? Whereas sometimes when you're pushing and striving to get in a band that signs a record deal, your life isn't as good. So I don't know. I don't know if any of that reflection was possible without the decrescendo, right? The decline of your career. Probably not.
Yeah, I mean, you know what? We you can write lyrics and you can write songs, and artists do, and the creative side says, well, I could put myself in that situation, and we hear those. But something else happens when I hear moving along, and you kind of allude to it. Like there's a reality to it. There's a credibility to it,
Yeah.
that comes out not just in the lyrics, but in the music itself as well. And by the way, your musical references that you're throwing out are making me giddy with all the different band references and song
Cool.
references. Just you are an encyclopedia for this stuff, it seems, which is nice, with all those. But look, moving along the song, and I've lost count of how many times I've listened to it, and hearing you sort of recite the lyrics was like, oh yeah, and I hear the music as you're reciting it. It sounds like a song that a band would sing who, and I say authentic, credible, who commands the stage, who has solidified their identity, who's not going to apologize for very much right now anymore. Um, is there an element of F you to someone in this song in any kind of way, or
Yeah, I think so. I mean, we were definitely pinned down by the record labels. It wasn't like, what's the word for it? Um, puerile. Like we weren't immature about it. We weren't just trying to take a shot back at people. But I think a lot of people in that old music business, maybe the current one, they don't really think of the human cost of what they do, like their decisions. They're not inclined to just call you and try to work things out. When things go bad, they're not inclined to like make amends. They never really recognize that they've done something wrong or that they failed to do something right, you know? And I feel like there was a bit of that, like we were pinned down pretty bad. We couldn't really move. And we felt like, well, we're still just going to get on with it. We're not going to complain about it anymore. It is like you can't stop us from making music and putting music out, right? And you can't, you might not like, you might not like the same songs we do, but they're all our songs. And if we like one more than you, well, it's our song. We're going to put it out. And we're going to put it first on the record. Those kinds of that. When you say "f you," I don't mean we were like being immature
yeah.
or reflexively angry. It was just kind of like you can't. I ultimately have freedom to put this music out, and if we love it, to get behind it and push it. You know.
Rebellious but kind.
So I think so. You know, with some looking back, at least some mature view that we could have probably done things
Yeah.
better. You know.
Um, do the rest of the songs after moving along do that? Like, do they move along, or do you find that they might dip into a little bit of targeted defiance here and there?
No, I think they all move along. That's one thing we've never done is like we've never written theme songs or like there's no real preconceived message or point to the songs. Like we just write. I like to think that they're pure inspiration. Like that's my view of a song. Like you either have a song or you don't. It's kind of like a math equation. Like it just exists. You didn't create it. Like you find it, you discover it. Same thing with the song. You either found a song or you didn't. Do you know? Like, and so you can try to be creative, but you can't make a song out of nothing if there's not one there. You either stumble into inspiration and you find this chord progression, which is super cool, and you find a melody that fits with it, or you don't. Like it's either there or it's not. That sounds like platonic almost, like these forms, these songs that exist. And I think that's the truth though. I really think that's true. Like you kind of tap into it. You don't make it. You just you're lucky enough to see it, or hear it.
At the risk of sounding getting too deep, do you find the song or does the song find you?
You have to find the song, I think.
Right.
Yeah, I think you have to find the song. You have to put the time in. Like it's not it takes work and labor and
Yeah.
a lot of it's really hard work too. Like the lyric part of it is excruciating often. Like that's the hardest part. Because the way we work anyway, we'll write a chord sequence or a riff and then a melody on top of it. And the way it like initially sing the melody is either consonants or vowels. Like it's kind of guttural. And that really constrains the lyrics because that's for me anyway, tied in with the melody and the chord change almost precisely. And once
Mm.
you've sung it a few times, and for me, if I don't remember something, it's not worth keeping. So I don't record things. I just keep them in my head. And if once I remember that melody, I almost never forget it. I got songs from 30 years ago, 20 years ago that are still locked in my head. And I think
But not anywhere else.
not anywhere else. No,
Wow.
not anywhere else. And so then the challenge is to take those raw materials and try to write lyrics. But the way that you've articulated the melody with those consonants and vowels dictates the lyrics. Like
Yeah.
you can't force a square peg into a round hole, so to speak, right? So that's always that's the hard work for me. Like the easy part not the easy part, but the easier part is just the inspiration of like, which I think
Right.
comes from just listening to lots and lots and lots of music as a kid. I think that's the key.
Yeah.
You know?
It's an interesting way to approach it, and thanks for sharing that. It's always fun to know how an artist approaches their music or their creative process, and it's quite often very different from artist to artist, it seems too,
Yeah.
right?
Oh
Um,
yeah.
the single "Moving Along" is also featured in a Paramount film called Casino in Ischia. Uh,
Yeah.
it's noted that movie stars Prison Break's Dominic Purcell is part of that. Congrats, by the way. I'm always intrigued, and it's kind of like whenever I hear a band's song has broken through in another industry, and movies are seem to be the easy industry to break through into, but I'm always like,
Right.
oh man, that is so cool, that is great, right? Um, did you shop the song for movies, or how does this happen? They find you?
Yeah, I wouldn't even know how to shop it for movies, but he found us, so he heard us, the director, Frank Chioda, and his brother wrote the film, I think, and Frank directed it. And Frank's a really interesting guy. He's a Harvard undergrad guy, Italian American from Pennsylvania, I think, like one of the Philly suburbs.
Yeah.
Um, and he just heard it and loved it right away and wanted to put it in the movie. And they filmed in it at Cinecittà in Rome, the famous Italian production house there. And then he had like Barbara DeFina, who was Scorsese's producer, I think his ex-wife, in fact, who did like Godfather,
Mm.
did no, she did Casino and Goodfellas for sure. Um, and great movies, obviously, you know. And so he was like, "Yeah, I want to use it." I'm like, "Yeah, sure." So we worked it out. We did a little deal, but it's a great film. I just watched it the other night with my daughter and my wife. It's like a great kind of feel good film. It really is kind of a cool throwback to when movies were just like fun, you know?
Jeez. I gotta
Yeah.
watch it still. So don't I haven't read the
Oh, you froze there.
we're cool, right? And then just, the whole Italian connection again thing, right?
Oh
So
yeah.
but encourage everyone to check it out. You don't have to be Italian. Do you ever worry, like in a scenario like this, that your song gets associated with something else and then you go, is that good? Is it bad? What if something good or what if something bad happens with it? Or man, it's cool. Like my music's over there and it's gonna do whatever it does over there.
I worry about that a little bit. Like, I obviously don't want to put my music into something that's like, I don't know, offensive or dark. Like, I like to keep the energy positive and hopeful. Doesn't mean it can't be sad or a film can't be sad or you know what I'm saying? Like, I just kind of think there are
Yeah.
some things that are positive and some things are really negative, and I don't want it to be in something super negative. You know, hard to
Yeah, yeah,
define.
I got it.
It's kind of like I see it. I know it when I see it. Like, I don't want to. Yeah, there's just some things I wouldn't put it in because it would make me feel bad. You know.
Yeah, you got some careful criteria that you're going, yeah, yeah, I would take this into consideration. Now, look, when fans listen to the album, and then comparatively, when they go see you live, what could they expect in terms of the transition from, headphones, to the live performance, to energy and sound in that live space?
Well, we're live a little bit rambunctious. Like, it's not always perfect for sure. We're definitely an get the mood right or get the energy right band rather than like technically concerned with being perfect or replicating the album. So sometimes we stretch out the songs a little bit. We're not a jam band, but sometimes we play a little bit longer. Kind of in the same way, like, I don't know, like the band or
Yeah.
the Allman Brothers. Not exactly. I guess the Allman Brothers are closer to a jam band, but you know what I'm saying? Like, we do stretch things out a little bit. And sometimes that works and sometimes it doesn't. I mean, that's the thing about spontaneity and being live is not every show is like perfect. So you get some shows that are pretty bad on that front where you try something that doesn't work or you're having a bad night singing or but we always try to keep it fresh. Like, I don't know, it's kind of like the Grateful Dead. Like, the treat with the Grateful Dead is that, yeah, some you might catch some bad shows now and then, but then you catch other shows where they were just playing over their heads. Like, they were all singing together perfectly, and they played all the songs you wanted to hear in exactly the order. You didn't know that, but and what you believe, what seemed like the perfect order, and then other times they weren't, but you had to kind of go to the shows to get that. So we always try hard. We put a lot of energy into it, but live is tricky now. I mean, we're not going to be touring anytime soon. It's just too expensive and it's too hard. Like bands all over the place are canceling their tours because the expense of being on the road now and the prices they have to charge for tickets are so high. And no offense to anybody who charges whatever they can get for them. Like God bless. I don't think
Yeah.
that's wonderful for them and their fan base if they can all afford to pay it. There's demand for it. Then I don't begrudge them that at all. But it's an awkward time now where it seems expensive and on both sides for the bands and for the fans.
So are knowing that, and you said I don't have any big tour. Are you doing some live dates at all?
We're looking at some in LA because that's convenient, and then probably a couple in San Diego, a couple in Vancouver, and see where it goes from there. But the problem with the West Coast is like it's so far between shows. I always joke with bands from like the East Coast. And by the East Coast, I mean the East Coast of the US. Like you go 50 miles
Yeah,
from New York City and you hit like, I don't know, 50 million people.
right.
Not quite, but you know what I'm saying? Like within 300 miles, probably 50 million people. It's crazy. So, but here the difference 300 miles is like barely gets you from, it doesn't even get you from LA to San Francisco.
Yeah, it's wild.
So, and then let alone like the difference, look how far it is from Vancouver to Calgary. Like that's in like 15 hours of driving, you know?
Would you pick up and just go east and do something?
Yeah, maybe that's a thought. It's just the time, like, it's
Yeah.
tricky. Everyone's got jobs and families, and touring is like exhausting, but it's fun to play one-off shows, especially. We'll look at festivals too, like, South by Southwest and
Yeah.
those kinds of things.
So speaking of live, you're releasing Moving Along on November 8th, but then do I have this right? You've also got a live album in the works.
We've got, yeah, we
You
definitely.
do, right? And
Yeah.
so that you've worked with multi Grammy award-winning producer Dave Cobb on. And for those who like references, Dave Cobb, i.e., Chris Stapleton, Greta Van Fleet, Rival Sons, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So again, I have a few questions here. Why a live album and why so close to this one?
Well, the live album we have in the can that we just haven't put out. So it's from a few years ago, not that long ago, but a few years ago. And we did it through Sirius XM. So it's not Cobb, that's a separate one, and I'll get into that
Okay.
and explain that difference. But we're just ready to put it out. And we think it slots in so well with this record. You were asking questions about the difference between the
Yeah.
live and the studio. This one kind of makes that difference clear. It shows how we try to space things up, some of the stretch out jams and stuff. So it just sounds great, and we think it's a good performance. So we're just going to put that out probably early in the new year. And then the Cobb record, we're still just finishing up, and that's going to be kind of a special record for us, I think, because it's like culmination of a lot of work, but it also shows a different side of the band, which is a little more like, I don't know, people have heard the Stones influence for sure on this current record. There's also a huge side of the band that's like Beatles, like kind of pop, not like what they call power pop or they used to call power pop, but more Beatles, Badfinger, Zombies, Beach
Oh,
Boys, that
wow.
kind of like classic pop. So putting that out, it's got a little more hard rock on it, the Cobb tracks, which will please some people. It's got some stuff that's a little more Tom Petty, kind of, which will be cool, acoustic kind of ballads and stuff, and then a little more in the Beatles kind of corner. So it'll show a whole other side of the band, I think, which is consistent with what we've done. Like the Rolling Stones, you think like they did She Comes in Colors. They had a bunch of that stuff too, Let's Spend the Night Together. Some stuff that was a little on the popular side. So we got a bunch of stuff.
Okay, I'm getting like excited. So we have the live album coming possibly in the new year, and then you have another album that you're working with Cobb on.
Yeah.
Oh, wow. And so you're targeting that for sometime next year?
Yeah, I would think like summer,
Wow, cool. We're
summer.
we're gonna have like some serious catalog here of Lions in the Street
We really
happening
will.
in the
And I've
next
heard
year.
like we got like 30 new songs too. I was thinking I've got 30. I was telling all these songs in my head. I probably got
Wow.
30 of them that I are either done or are in various stages of being completed too. So recording those is a little trickier, and who knows, I'm on no hurry up time frame there, but there's a lot to get out.
See, I've got music PTSD sometimes when I hear artists that I like. They say, I got these 30 songs, I just haven't put them onto something. And I'm like, and I'm not going to say the band names that I like that have done this to me in the past, but I'm kind of like, when is that song? When are they coming?
I know
Right?
it can take
So,
forever.
but it sounds like we got a lot of music coming in the next year, so that's kind of exciting. How do you end up working with Dave Cobb then? How does this happen?
Well, we've known Dave for a while, so he's one of the guys we recorded with on the labels, and we've just had these tracks we've been trying to finish, going back and forth with him and other people to kind of mix and master and whatnot. So it's taken a while. We've been in no rush, been in no rush to get it done. But he's in Nashville now. He was a Sandy Roberton
Yeah.
affiliation too, so a lot of good things come from Sandy.
Um, this is exciting. I know right now, fans can pre-order your album Moving Along. Um, and that's on your linesinthestreet.com website. Are they going to be able to pre-order these ones as well at some point? Is that the flow we're going with?
At some point, yeah, we just have
Okay.
to get them finished and made, and
Obviously, right. Yeah.
yeah, but we'll definitely make them available through the website.
And so now your current one, Moving Along, that is going to be released November 8th, they can also stream some of those tracks on your website as well, correct?
Yep.
Right. Are we going to get merch and other perks offerings on the website, linesinthestreet.com?
I think so. Yeah, we'll have vinyl records for sure, CDs. Some people still love CDs, so we'll have CDs, t-shirts eventually. I
Right.
mean, just see, we just try not to buy too much stuff at the beginning, then you have to sell it. It's like easier just to wait until people are asking you for things.
Yeah, I mean, again, I'm a traditionalist, right? So I am the guy who's gonna wanna, I say this, people are get sick of me saying it, but I don't care. I want to open the package. I want to hear the crinkle of the paper, and I want to open the little, CD case, or, the record sliding through the envelope of, the vinyl envelope there. So, yeah, I was just curious because I was looking through the site and I'm like, is there any merch going on here? When is the merch coming? So,
When's the
um,
merch coming? It's a good question.
when is the merch coming? Linesinthestreet.com.
Linesinthestreetband.com.
Linesinthestreetband.com.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yep, no problem.
I'm going to make that correction and we'll have that in the show notes. Um, in what way are all of you lions?
I don't know, like lions work together, like they're part of a pack, but then they hunt kind of on their own. Like I don't know, lions are pack animals, but they're still pretty independent. I think I don't know, that's one way to look at it. But we're also like kind of fighters, but we never really fight unless you have to,
Is
Like
that where it came from?
no, we were. It's funny. We came. You look for band names. We were called the Years when we signed our deals with TVT and with 604 Universal, and they were. We just changed the name because we were like, oh, we just want to change the name. But it wasn't like we thought it was going to get us out of the
Okay.
contract. We just kind of thought, it's time for a change. We'll put it out. So we just came up with we were like Lions. That was one we liked, just because lions are cool. Who doesn't like lions? And then and then we thought, well just too many other bands like had the name Lions, or so we were just looking for something to add to it. And I don't even know who came up with it. We're like in the street. Yeah, it sounds good. Like Lions in the street. Like that's sort of scary. You wouldn't want to walk out your door if there were lions in the street. And then someone was like, "Oh, did you get that from the Doors?" They're like, "What?"
Oh,
They're like, "No, there's a Doors song that has this lyric, like a spoken word poetry thing that has this lyric, lions in the street." And we are like, "No, I never even heard that." Like the Doors, but I didn't know the spoken word poetry. I'm not, you know, that's not the Doors stuff I'm into. And so as it turns out, they recorded that spoken word poetry thing at the same studio, one of the same studios we recorded at in LA, Hollywood Sound, which is no longer there, but kind of a cool story there. But we just
that
picked it.
is.
Someone said it comes from like Hebrew poetry, like it's really, really Old Testament kind of stuff, and it's like, don't be afraid. There are no lions in the street. So that's the intended meaning, like as written. Don't lions in the street are like a fiction, like something you're afraid of that doesn't exist, you know. But
This
we
is
didn't know
ooh,
that. time. We didn't think that, but it's pretty cool.
This is like beer talk. This is like totally having this conversation and having a beer going.
Yeah.
So the name, right? No, that's cool. Look, it's almost like actually going, you're looking at a painting, an artwork, and everybody has an interpretation of it. It sounds like you've got a different variety of opportunities for people to just enjoy the name. I
Yeah.
think it's cool. I think it's kind of neat. So, and some of your artwork and album work looks really, really good too. So that's awesome. Um, Look, Chris, I really appreciate you sharing your music with me, spending time with us here. I know I've asked you a bunch of questions. Is there anything that you'd like to leave us with before you go?
No, I just hope people dig in and like the music. I mean, we make music for people, not for, we make it because we like it, but we also make it because we think other people will like it. And, I hope people just dig in and let go. It's like just rock and roll.
That is Chris Kinnon, who is not down in the hole, but instead, he and bandmates Lions in the Street are walking back to you for more than all your love. And hey, hey, Arlene, fans are going to be saying, "What's mine ain't yours." So, Lady Blue, if you're going to lose, we don't have to tighten the reins. Let's just head down to Shangri-La. I will have all the links and details for Lines in the Street in the show notes. Chris, thank you again. I hope that we catch up real soon, and good luck on the new albums.
Thanks a million, Guido. Appreciate it.